again, you're thinking militarily. The Strait of Hormuz is best governed by, peaceful relations between Iran and its regional neighbors, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And if you have that, then the flow of oil will transit no problem. Why does Russia need to now further extend itself to do something that's very un-Russian? The Russians don't go around building military bases around the world. That's what we do. The Russian military operation in Syria was an anomaly brought on by a unique set of circumstances that led to an invitation by Bashar al-Assad. Russia is operating in Africa with the Africa Corps, but it's done again at the invitation of nations. But Russia doesn't go around and just build bases to project power into a region. And I don't think Russia's going to build a base in the Strait of Hormuz. It makes no sense, because that implies that there's going to be a military solution to that conflict. And a Russian military base in the Strait of Hormuz only puts Russia more at risk, because that base will just be destroyed in day one of the war that doesn't need to be fought. When you find out how this system works, and that's what Elon Musk is doing right now, is finding out how the system works. It is one of the most corrupt systems in the world, and it has to come to an end. Otherwise, we'll never have the government we want. We have to take the money out of the government, the corruption out of the government. This is the revolution we want. Did you hear that the CIA, and I said the entire CIA's got to go. Every one of them is corrupt. Every single one of them is corrupted by the thought process, the lack of the constitutionality of what they do. CIA just said, y'all can, we'll buy you out. Every one of you. All of our employees can walk 8-month severance package. How about right now, Trump is firing every FBI, or bringing under review every FBI agent involved in the January 6th. Turns out that, 5,000 to 6,000 of the 13,000 agents were involved. So right off the bat, we're talking about a near 50% cut in FBI agents, which is perfect. I think you need to go further. This entire FBI agents in Albany, every one of them that came into my house have to go, because they knew what they did was unconstitutional. The assistant U.S. District Attorney for Northern District of New York, got to go, got to be fired. But they did wrong, and there must be accounting. See, the way it works in the past is that they pretend that or they can leave an investigation open forever, and you'll never get it back. That's what they would do under normal circumstances. I don't know if this is going to be good in the long term or whatever, but understand this, that the next 4 years are going to be defined by a man filling a power vacuum and asserting American power prerogatives in a way that no president has ever asserted them in recent history. And the world is powerless in many cases to resist. What is Europe going to do if Trump decides to take Greenland? They can do nothing, because they are nothing. That doesn't mean I want him to take Greenland. I'm just saying that if Trump decides to make Greenland America, he's going to do it. No one can stop him from doing that. There's a power vacuum. And so while I'm thrilled at Trump coming in and creating the revolution at home, understand that Trump is a two-edged sword. And that same arrogance, that same aggressiveness that he's doing in destroying the establishment here, he's thrusting into the global environment. And that's not so good. I'm somebody who said this system that we have, and it's being exposed, the corruption of Washington, D.C. is being exposed. Hundreds of billions of dollars. First of all, they don't know where it goes. When you're told that in last year's budget, $261 billion, we just don't know where it went. How? That means there's corruption. That means it's going to places that nobody wants to report. It's unreported expenditures, lost money, whatever you want to call it. It's the payoff. It's how Washington, D.C. pays people off. And they do it. Now we're finding out USAID. Every senator, every congressman is out there screaming, you can't do this. Investigate them. Investigate their role in committees, and investigate the conversations they have with USAID-sponsored NGOs to define budget items. Who gets that money? When we give the Norwegian Refugee Council $154 million last year to hand out in miscellaneous cash payments. That's bribes, guys. That's called a bribe. Okay, it's not called aid. It's called a bribe. Here's $154 million. And you know what it tells you? that the Norwegian Refugee Council is controlled by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America, because that's how we get the money in for people to do. We just filter it through different laundering mechanisms. And the USAID was a giant laundering mechanism that fed it back. People keep saying, Scott, but I keep hearing that, Congress is corrupt, but where's the quid pro quo? I mean, okay, so they donate the money, but where's their USAID is the quid pro quo, because the money goes to NGO. Every congressman sits the Helsinki Commission, bunch of idiot congressmen to get together and think that they're gods in the world. They all control the National Endowment for Democracy expenditures, then break it down. That goes out to their buddy, who then sits on an NGO, but they get $400,000 to do something, but then you don't see how that $400,000 is spent. 80% of it goes to their salaries. So basically, these fat cats get appointed to be this NGO by this congressman, and there's the payback. Right there's the payback. An $800,000 a year sinecure to sit behind a desk and pretend that you're providing aid to somebody when 20% of it just goes to pay off the other people and nothing gets to the people in need. And that's the scam being run by USC, by the Department of Education, by everybody. But now that we have a different approach in Washington, D.C., heads are going to roll. I will get my stuff back and people will be fired, because that's the way the system's got to work. I'm in love with this revolution. I think it's great. Now, on the international stage, let's just remember this. We live in a world that is defined in large part by relationships that date back to the end of the Second World War. We talk about the rules-based international order all the time. Joe Biden made the continuation of the rules-based international order the number one national security objective of the United States, recognizing that the United States, in order to be the global hegemon, needs the system that it built. But the system is collapsing, and everybody understands it's collapsing. And so what's happened is what was the status quo is changing. And as the United States diminishes in power with administrations like the Biden administration that, just weak people, indecisive, weak people, diminishes, nobody's filling the vacuum. BRICS isn't ready to fill the vacuum. BRICS is a developing, emerging organization, but they don't have a military mandate. They don't have a global mandate. They haven't really figured out who they are and what they're going to do yet. They're still in that growth process. So there's this vacuum that exists. People are just letting it. Europe can't stand up into it because Europe belongs to us. Who can fill that vacuum? Then here comes Donald Trump, and he goes, I'll fill that vacuum. And he's doing it very aggressively. And there's nobody to push back. There's nobody to push back. And this is the reality that we exist in today because of the inadequacies of the global system. There's a power vacuum that this power mad person is going to fill. And Russia and China, they're not positioned to challenge the United States in Gaza because Russia and China aren't global actors in that sphere. Russia will push back in its near abroad. They'll push back in the area in the Arctic. They'll push back in Ukraine. They'll push back in the Pacific near Japan. But Russia's not going to push back in Gaza because that's not Russia's business. Russia isn't going to push back in Panama. China's not going to put. Trump just has got Panama to cancel the Hong Kong management contracts for the Panama Canal. What can China do? Nothing. Because there's a power vacuum, and Trump is rushing in to fill it. And what happens is certain situations around the world tend to deteriorate without any control. One of those situations is in the Middle East. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one that has been dragging on forever without a solution. Trump is a different kind of leader. A leadership abhors a vacuum. And when you see a vacuum, he will go into it. So whatever's flowing in there right now is money, is the tail end of the money that was passed under Biden. But there's not new money. But we know it's passed because even when people were talking about being shut down, Trump was authorizing Patriot missile batteries to be taken out of storage in Israel, sent to Raytheon to be refurbished. That doesn't happen for free. And for 90 Patriot missiles to be flown into Poland and on to Ukraine, that doesn't happen for free. And that's an accounting issue. That's American equipment being withdrawn from Israel. It's still ours. We're transferring it over. That's money transferred. So you can't do that if there's a freeze on aid. So I believe that while the cash and the civilian support programs from USAID have been terminated, the military side is still going in. Donald Trump's not a diplomat. He's not a statesman. He's a New York State real estate businessman. And when you sit down with a real estate businessman in New York to talk business, somebody puts an offer on the table. The people that say no are kicked out of the room. You're not part of the game anymore. He's looking for a counter offer. And I think that's because this is so ridiculous, so illegal, so impossible. It's literally impossible for him to do what he says he's doing. He can't do it. He's put an offer out there, and he's challenging the people not just to say no, but to say, hey, no, this is so crazy. We got to come up with something, because there has been no solution to Gaza. This is my guess. I'm just guessing. I'm spitballing because it's the only thing that allows me to believe that there's sanity in the White House. Because if I'm wrong on this and Donald Trump actually believes he can do this, then we are literally being governed by a madman, by an insane man who is dangerous, not just for the world, but for the American people. And it's something that we have to reflect on. I don't want to believe that that's the case right now. So I'm going with, parsing this out, thinking that Donald Trump is simply look, this is a man, you know how he opened up his gambit for North Korean dialogue. Rocket Man, fire and fury. I'm going to nuke the Korean Peninsula, take them all down. Next thing you know, he's walking across the DMZ, shaking hands with Kim Jong-un. How did you get from A to Z? He's a man of extremes. And so I'm just hoping that this is just a case of Donald Trump challenging the world to come up with a different solution. If you don't want this to happen, because Trump has literally told the Israelis, you're no longer the solution. You are the problem. And he cut them right out. And into this vacuum steps Donald Trump with a plan so audacious, so ridiculous, so absurd that it can't be ignored. If you saw Netanyahu, and the thing that got me thinking this way is just watching Netanyahu's body language. He was not happy about any of this. This is a man who is gripping the podium, looking at the president just going, what the hell is he talking about here? He was insulted. He's the prime minister of Israel, being told by the president of the United States on national TV, the whole world watching, that he's incompetent. He can't do the job. He can't finish the job. I, Donald Trump, am going to do the job. Now you'll say, but is Donald Trump's solution a solution? Of course not. On the face of it, not. But who is Donald Trump? Again, Ray's the one who taught me to think like this, to dig a little bit deeper. First of all, it would take a tremendous amount of military resources. This wouldn't be a cakewalk. We would have to, bring in a lot of resources that would weaken us around the world. We're not what we used to be. We can't fight 2.5 wars anymore. And this would become a major conflict. One of the reasons why we ended up getting out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq, and why we're going to pull out of Syria is that it's a resource drain. Getting involved in the conflict in Gaza isn't just about, sending in, we're talking multiple brigades going in. We're probably talking about a Marine division, and we're probably talking about the equivalent of another 2.5 Army divisions going in to fight. Now, then you have to rotate these people in. So that Marine division has to have another division. Now you've taken 2/3 of the Marine Corps and you've allocated it to Gaza. But in reality, you're probably all three, because the other one on standby is going to be looking at that rotation. This is a huge resource drain. This is what the military is going to tell the president, is we can do this. If you want to do this, it'll be horrible. But it will absorb so much of our capacity that if China decided to have a go at Taiwan, we have very few options left. God forbid Russia decided to go at the Baltics. We got no options left. We can't do everything. And, you want to take on Iran as well? We don't have those options. I mean, this is the one thing they'll be saying. Where does Gaza fit into the national security of the United States? When you list all of the problems that the United States is facing out there, from, Trump saying we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Well, that has a potential military aspect there. How do we secure the Strait of Hormuz? Things of that nature. Taiwan and China, there's a military thing there. South China Sea, the Philippines, the whole 3rd Marine Division's been retrained as a littoral fighting force. You're going to pull them out to Gaza. Gaza doesn't even register on the map of national security priorities. So there's this, the Secretary of Defense, when he takes a look at the guidance he's given the military, Gaza's nowhere to be found on that map. Nowhere. And from Trump's perspective, that's a failure. And he doesn't want to do that anymore. So he's disruptive. He's changing everything so that whatever comes forward has to be something new, fresh. And I think that's what Trump's trying to create here through his madness. At least I hope he is, because otherwise, as I said before, he's gone totally insane. And I don't think he's gone totally insane. I think Trump's having a great time playing this game. Ray called him a psychopath. Maybe it's this kind of game that psychopaths play. But I just think that he's basically saying what has gone on hasn't worked, and it's not going to work, and we're not going to continue to invest in something that has no chance of working. So wipe the table clean, come up with an audacious opening gambit, fall back, and let's see what people have. So this is I don't want to get into a military discussion because it's heading down the path. It just simply isn't going to happen, Danny. There's no way the United States is going to war in Gaza. No way. We could run limited hostage rescue missions. I mean, that, we could do stuff like that, but we are not putting a Marine division across the beach. We are not putting an Army division on the ground. It just isn't going to happen and so when you start talking about putting divisions on the ground, because this is a multi-division task here, you're just sucked out the whole strength of America. And then what happens? North Korea and South Korea decide to hook and jab. Where are we getting the brigades to do that? China and Taiwan, we ain't got nothing. South Pacific, nothing. The Europe, nothing. Iran, nothing. Africa, nothing. Oh, God, wait a minute. We want to invade the Panama Canal. Nothing. We've just taken all our forces out and thrown them into Gaza, which doesn't register as any level on our national security priorities. So we really shouldn't be talking about the military at all, because it just literally isn't going to happen. We have to talk about the strategic posture of the United States globally, and Gaza doesn't fit anywhere. And yet, if we were to go into Gaza, it would suddenly suck the resources needed to deal with all of these other issues. My best advice to Donald Trump is find out what the Russian plan is, find a way to relabel it the Trump plan, and you can walk away with a win. But otherwise, you're just going to get mud in your face. And Russia isn't any other country in the world, except maybe China. China can step up to the United States as well. But Trump can't. I think we've had this conversation before. His threat of $45 a barrel, oil. One, that requires the Saudis to cooperate. And the Saudis right now are saying, we have a break-even margin at $88 or $85. We're already losing money, $78. You asked us to lower the price. We ain't lowering the price anymore because we can't afford to do it. Plus, this nonsense in Gaza, you want us to lower oil while you're committing, you're talking about genocide. So the Saudis are out of it. But the real factor here is domestic. The West the Permian Basin, West Texas. There's two kinds of oil fields there. One is an established well, $66 a barrel break-even point. The other one is new. The established well is like $34 a barrel break-even point. The new drills, $66 a barrel. If you drop oil to $45 a barrel, you're going to lose 1/3, 30% of America's oil production in 2 years is going to be gone, and it's not going to recover. That'll destroy the American economy. So there's no aspect of the Kellogg-Trump plan that has any viability whatsoever. That insane idiot on TV, look, I'm not here to tell people what to do, but there was a South Vietnamese president back in the early 60s named Diem, who was causing a lot of headaches for the United States because he wasn't playing the game that we wanted played. And he ended up dead. And if Zelensky isn't careful, he's going to end up dead because he's become a problem, a huge problem for the United States, a huge problem for Europe, a huge problem for Ukraine. There's no aspect of him that factors into anything called a solution. And you saw it right there in front of you. That's insanity. That's literally a man who has lost his mind. Half of me wants to feel sorry for him, except that I remember in 2019, after he won an election based upon a peace platform, he held a war council where he pounded the table and said, I am going to take us to war with Russia. You got your war, pal.